My wife bragged. My DNA results say I'm descended from European royalty. I said, "Congratulations, Your Highness." I also got a test for our son. The results showed he had no European ancestry, but he did have a 50% genetic match with our neighbor. When I handed her the results and the divorce papers, our neighbor showed up at the door. Man, I swear, my whole life was a setup for that one cruel joke. I'm Ethan Caldwell, 45 years old, and my world is built on chemistry and data, things that don't lie. I believe in precise measurements and verifiable results. My wife, Maya, was my opposite. She was 42, a high-end status consultant who lived entirely on illusion and aspiration. She was obsessed with pedigree, titles, and making sure our life looked perfect on paper. We lived in a quiet, comfortable house in Denver. But the real centerpiece of our life was Leo, our 8-year-old son. He's a good kid, full of energy, terrible at math, and absolutely the reason I worked so hard. Leo was my legacy. When I looked at him, I didn't see chemistry. I saw a future, something real and solid that Maya and I had built together. The conflict started when Maya found those consumer DNA ancestry tests. She saw them not as science, but as a chance to upgrade her self-image. She was always pushing to prove she was better than her modest roots. She spent weeks tracking the parcel, talking about how she hoped she was descended from some forgotten European duke. I just laughed and told her, "You're descended from hard-working people, Maya. That's better than royalty." When her results finally came back, she held a party for her friends. She announced loudly, beaming, that her DNA traced back to a minor, distant line of European royalty. She drank champagne and demanded everyone call her Your Highness. It was absurd, but it was harmless vanity. Until she insisted that Leo take the test, too. "He needs to know his heritage, Ethan," she insisted. "He needs to know he has royal blood. It'll give him confidence." I hesitated. I hated using Leo for her vanity project. But I figured, what's the harm? It was just a swab and a label. I sent his sample in, mostly to shut down the constant boasting. That's when the first seed of doubt was planted. I remembered the casual ease of our neighbor, Robert, 40 years old. An overly friendly guy who always volunteered to help Maya with heavy lifting or car troubles. He was a constant fixture around our house. Someone Maya insisted was just a friend. Looking back at the timeline, I realized his friendship started right after a period when Maya had been heavily pushing for us to try for a second child. It was a dark, nauseating thought, one I immediately dismissed. I chose to trust the woman I loved. I should have trusted the data I was about to receive. The results came back 2 weeks later, delivered to my private work email. I opened my report first, standard German and Eastern European mix. Nothing exciting. Then I opened Leo's. And the world I thought I lived in collapsed with the scientific certainty of a 0% genetic match to me. I knew something had fundamentally shifted in my world the moment Maya received her ancestry results. Honestly, I was happy for her. Until she turned the science into a full-blown status symbol. She framed the results, the paper showing the distant European claim, and hung it right next to our wedding photo. Her boasting was relentless. She spent weeks telling everyone she knew about her royal blood, demanding special treatment, and looking down on our friends who had boring ancestry. She didn't just tell me. She told my parents, my colleagues, and every single person at our local coffee shop. I swear, she was planning a formal court claim for a forgotten title. The final act of vanity came when she looked at Leo, our 8-year-old son, and declared his current identity insufficient. "He needs to know his heritage, Ethan," she insisted, tapping the royal claim on the framed document. "He needs to know he has royal blood. It'll give him the confidence he needs to compete. I saw right through the logic. It wasn't for Leo's confidence. It was to solidify her own fabricated status. I told her I hated the idea of treating our son like a vanity project. What if the results are wrong, Maya? He's fine just being Leo. She dismissed my concern with a wave of her hand. The tests are accurate. Stop being so neurotic about everything. It's just a fun swab. She pressured me, using the very thing I valued, Leo's well-being, as leverage. She convinced my mother that Leo needed this boost for his self-esteem. My mother called me, her voice gentle but firm. "Ethan, darling, just do it. For Leo, it might be good for him." I felt cornered. I couldn't fight my mother and my wife over a harmless test. I sent Leo's sample in, but I sent it through my own work account, ensuring the results would be delivered directly to my private email. I didn't trust Maya to handle the data objectively. I remember the day the results arrived. Maya was out. I opened my report first, a mix of German and Eastern European ancestry. Unexciting. Then I opened Leo's file, and the bottom dropped out of my world. The number that mattered wasn't the European percentage. It was the final sentence of the report, the one that referred to the biological father. 0% genetic match to Ethan Caldwell. I didn't yell. I didn't throw the laptop. The shock of seeing that report, 0% genetic match to Ethan Caldwell, was so absolute, it bypassed the rage entirely. It triggered a cold, professional calm. As a chemist, I knew that 0 meant 0. The data didn't lie. 7 years of marriage, 8 years of fatherhood, 10 years of stability. All were built on a fraudulent foundation. I went straight back to the data. I poured myself a glass of water, and my hands didn't even shake. I moved past the initial devastation and looked at the rest of the file. The report contained the standard statistical profile for the unknown biological father. The company offers a service where they search their database for common genetic links. I scrolled down slowly. The screen lit up with the result. One potential close familial match identified. 50% genetic marker overlap. A 50% match means a full sibling, a child or a parent. And the name linked to that DNA. It wasn't just a name. It was Robert Jensen. My breath hitched. Robert. Robert was our next-door neighbor. He was the overly friendly guy who always volunteered to help Maya with the yard work or heavy lifting. He was the constant fixture around our house that Maya insisted was just a friend. The realization was a punch to the gut that finally brought the emotional pain crashing through the logic. My son Leo wasn't just someone else's. He was my neighbor's. The betrayal had been happening right across the damn driveway. I remembered the casual ease of their relationship, the shared laughter over the fence. The nights Maya claimed she was running errands or meeting her sister. I had dismissed it all as normal, neighborly kindness. I then executed the final step of my audit. I pulled up the credit card statement, focusing on the period 9 years ago, exactly 9 months before Leo was born. There were charges to a small boutique hotel 30 miles away, a hotel Robert frequented for client meetings. The dates aligned perfectly with a weekend Maya claimed she was at a mandatory, all-day corporate retreat. The data didn't just point to infidelity. It built an irrefutable timeline of the paternity fraud. I stood up, pushing the chair back. The shock had burned away the confusion, leaving behind a terrifying, cold certainty. I didn't want to confront Maya. Confrontation would be emotional and messy, giving her room to lie and manipulate. I looked at the results again. The truth was scientific. I decided that the takedown had to be equally precise, public, and absolutely devastating. I calmly drafted the divorce papers, listing the grounds as adultery and fraudulent misrepresentation of paternity. I knew I had the final, ultimate weapon, and I would deploy it in front of the one person whose judgment Maya truly craved: her family. After seeing Robert's name on that DNA report, everything changed color. It wasn't just a betrayal. It was a psychological operation executed right across my driveway. I spent the next day sitting alone, meticulously replaying the last 8 years through the lens of a new, horrifying truth. I am an analyst, right? So I built a log of Robert. I remembered the time the garage door broke, and Robert happened to be outside with his tools, offering to fix it. He spent 3 hours in my garage working with Maya while I was stuck on a conference call in my office. I thought he was being helpful. He was actually just being available. I remembered the summer Maya insisted we host a massive neighborhood barbecue. She spent the entire afternoon laughing with Robert, their heads close, whispering jokes I never heard. I just barbecued the steaks, proud of the life I thought I was maintaining. She often criticized me for working too much, but Robert, who owned his own business, always seemed to have endless free time to be here. His presence was always so easy, so casual. That ease was the most sickening part of the entire betrayal. She didn't cheat with some anonymous co-worker from a far-off city. She chose the man she saw every single day, the man who was readily available when I was focused on the stability she demanded. I realized Leo's paternity wasn't a sudden mistake. It was a systematic arrangement. Leo was born right after that period when Maya was supposedly at a distant corporate retreat. The pieces fit together with brutal, terrifying precision. The calmness I felt was strategic. I knew I couldn't afford to lose my composure now. I went straight to my lawyer, not with a sob story, but with the data. The zero match report, the hotel charges, and the timeline of Robert's convenient appearances. I filed the divorce papers, listing adultery and paternity fraud as the grounds. The key was the confrontation. I didn't want to meet them separately. I wanted the devastation to be absolute and simultaneous. I arranged a meeting with Maya at our house, citing a final financial settlement. Then I called Robert, using a mutual contact's phone number so he wouldn't recognize the caller ID. I told him I urgently needed his advice on a structural repair on my back deck, asking him to come over at exactly 4 p.m. tomorrow. I ensured he would show up at the precise moment Maya would be reading the DNA results. I wanted Robert to walk into that room and see the ruins of his secret laid out in scientific fact. The ultimate betrayal deserved the ultimate, synchronized reveal. The afternoon I set the meeting, the house was too quiet. I had everything laid out on the dining table: the divorce papers, the credit card statements, and the crisp, damning DNA report. It felt less like a living room and more like a prosecutor's war room. My hands didn't shake. I was past anger. I was in operational mode. I was waiting for the clock to hit 4. Maya arrived 20 minutes early. She walked in with that characteristic professional confidence, wearing a silk blouse and carrying a sleek leather tote. She looked exactly like the woman I fell in love with, and exactly like the monster who betrayed me. "Ethan," she said, her voice sharp. "Let's be quick. I assume you're ready to discuss the financial split. I don't have all day." She clearly thought this was a surrender negotiation. I didn't offer her coffee. I didn't offer her a chair. I walked to the dining table and placed a large manila envelope in front of her. "Sit down, Maya," I told her. "This isn't about the financial split you think it is." She frowned, pulling out a chair and sitting down, her eyes narrowing. She opened the envelope, pulling out the first document, the divorce petition. Divorce? She scoffed. You filed? Over a fight? You're being dramatic. Then she flipped the page and saw the grounds. Adultery and paternity fraud. The color drained from her face. The casual confidence vanished, replaced by genuine, raw terror. You have no proof, she whispered, looking frantically around the room. You can't prove that. I looked at the window. The mine at hand was creeping toward 3:55 p.m. I don't need to prove it with words, Maya, I replied. I need to prove it with science. I then placed the second document in front of her. It wasn't a standard financial form. It was Leo's DNA ancestry report, the one she insisted I order for his confidence. She stared at the official letterhead, and I watched her mind race, trying to rationalize the data in front of her. She didn't get to the 0% match first. She got to the final page, where the company had inserted a disclaimer about the 50% genetic match to an unknown male. That was the key. She screamed, not in anger, but in pure defeat, realizing the test she ordered for vanity had become the ultimate weapon against her. She tried to grab the report, but I pulled it back. It's true, isn't it, Maya? I asked, my voice heavy with the weight of 8 lost years. He's not mine. She broke down, denying everything. But her eyes kept glancing at the clock. She was panicking about the evidence. She wasn't panicking about the man who was about to walk through the door. I walked to the living room window, pulling back the blind just slightly. It was 4 p.m., precisely. I saw the familiar beat-up landscaping truck pull into the driveway, just as scheduled. I turned back to the sobbing woman. You may want to stop crying, Maya. Your boyfriend is here. You may want to stop crying, Maya. Your boyfriend is here. The confusion on her face, the terror mixed with utter bewilderment, was the first sign that my plan was working perfectly. She didn't believe me until the front doorbell rang twice, loud and insistent. I walked to the door and opened it. Standing there was Robert, our neighbor, holding a toolbox and looking slightly confused. Ethan, hey, you said you had a deck issue? I hope it's quick. I've got a meeting. Robert stepped inside, his eyes immediately falling on the dining table. He saw Maya's sobbing, the scattered divorce papers, and the chaos he had unknowingly walked into. Robert, I said, my voice completely devoid of anger, just cold, heavy fact. The deck is fine. We have a much more immediate structural issue we need your expertise on. Maya, sensing the trap closing, let out a choked gasp and lunged toward the table, desperate to snatch the DNA report. I blocked her easily. I walked over to Robert and placed the final page of the DNA report, the one confirming the 50% match, directly into his hands. Robert, Maya and I are getting divorced for paternity fraud. That little project you helped Maya with 9 years ago. We just got the final results back. I believe this concerns you directly. Robert looked at the paper, his hands trembling as he read the scientific confirmation. 50% genetic match. He didn't need a chemist to explain what that meant. He looked at me, then at Maya, realization and horror washing over his face. Maya, Robert whispered, his voice cracking. What did you do? She screamed, a sound of pure, unadulterated defeat that was nothing like the professional panic she usually performed. You bastard, Ethan. You set us up? You recorded? I recorded nothing, Maya, I corrected, pointing at the report. Science recorded this. Your own vanity ordered the test. I looked directly at Robert, who was leaning against the wall, looking completely ruined. You've been calling my house for years, Maya. And every time you looked at Leo, you were looking at his son. Robert dropped his toolbox. The loud clang echoed through the hallway. He turned on Maya, his face a mask of devastating realization. You let me believe I was just helping a friend. You didn't tell me I had a son. The moral high ground was completely mine. I delivered the final, cold verdict to the two people who had so carelessly destroyed my family. The divorce is filed. I'm taking the house equity, and I'm ensuring you have absolutely zero financial claim to Leo's life or future. Your lie about royalty brought me the absolute truth. I looked at my ex-wife one last time, her body shaking with a fury she couldn't direct at me. You wanted to know who he was. Now you both do. I walked out of the room, leaving the scientific evidence on the table, letting Robert and Maya face the devastation of their shared, secret life. I didn't wait for the screaming to start. The moment I closed the front door, leaving Maya and Robert facing the DNA report, I felt the air leave my lungs for the first time in 8 years. It was over. I drove straight to my sister's house, needing a neutral place to land. I called my lawyer, confirmed the divorce petition, and the restraining order were immediately filed against Maya. The next few hours were chaos, filtered through my phone. The first calls were from my mother. She wasn't angry at me. She was crying, heartbroken, asking for forgiveness. "Ethan," she sobbed, "we were so foolish. We wanted a grandchild so badly, we believed the lie. Forgive your father. He is ruined." My sister took the phone and confirmed the scene. "They saw the report, Ethan. They see everything. They chose you. That was the only redemption I needed." My parents, finally confronted with a betrayal that was scientific and undeniable, realized their mistake. They chose their son, the one they had always overlooked. The situation with Robert, the neighbor, was messy, and my lawyer advised extreme caution. Robert's wife, who had absolutely no involvement, filed for divorce the moment the truth leaked in the neighborhood. Robert, facing professional ruin and a broken home, tried calling me repeatedly. I didn't answer. He wasn't my problem. The custody and financial decisions concerning Leo were handled by the system. My final, deliberate act was to secure Leo's future. I didn't want the boy to be punished for his mother's cruelty. I used my lawyer to establish a clean financial path forward, ensuring my $700,000 trust fund would remain untouched by either Maya or Robert. I knew Maya would try to use Leo as leverage, but the court saw the DNA evidence and the circumstances of the reveal. My petition was simple. I relinquished all legal claims to paternity, but demanded the right to maintain a stable, continuous relationship with Leo, whom I had raised for 8 years, if the court deemed it best for the child. The judge, reviewing the cold, hard science and Maya's history of deception, sided with me on the grounds of emotional stability. Maya was stripped of her financial demands and her credibility. She lost everything: the husband who loved her, the status she craved, and the financial settlement she planned. Her final downfall was complete when the neighborhood social media exploded with the news. She was forced to leave Denver entirely, isolated by the sheer weight of her deceit. Robert, meanwhile, was left to reckon with the biological son he had hidden and the wreckage of his own marriage. I kept in contact with Leo, taking him out for ice cream and going on hikes. But now it was clear. I was his devoted guardian, not his father. My love for him never changed. Only the legal terms did. My parents, in a final act of devotion, established a new college fund for Leo, ensuring his future was secure regardless of biological parents. The family was rebuilt, piece by piece, on the foundation of truth and loyalty. The things Maya had despised. I looked back at the DNA report only once. The pursuit of fake royalty had delivered the most devastating, undeniable scientific truth. And I finally understood that sometimes the most powerful revenge is not in shouting, but in the cold, precise science of documentation.